welcome back to the Are We Nearly There Yet podcast. Maybe you're joining us for the first time or whatever, you are so welcome in this space with us. My name is Sonia, I'm part of Kerith Community Church as the families lead, and I also have 4 children of my own. Each week on the podcast I have a different conversation with someone about a different aspect of the journey that we're on as parents with our family life. This week I had a conversation with Sarah, quite timely conversation. Sarah and her husband intentionally chose to home educate their children rather than send them to school a few years ago. Loads of what she says I felt could be applied to different areas of our parenting journey, whether we choose to do that or not. So why don't you listen in and join us together? Welcome this week to the podcast. We have Sarah with us. Sarah Goodwin, you're so welcome.
Thank you. Hello.
It's so good to have you with us on Are We Nearly There Yet? So Sarah, tell me a little bit about who you are and who family is to you.
Okay, so hi everybody. I'm Sarah. I live in Ascot with my family, my husband Lee and our 3 children. Well, I grew up in Maidenhead, which is just down the road, and my husband is from South Africa.
Oh, wow.
We met working on a bar, in a bar together when we were younger. And yeah, so that's that. His family now moved over here as well, so they live in Basingstoke. My mum and my sisters still live in Maidenhead. Well, one of my sisters, my other sister, lives in Australia with her daughter. So that's always really fun to speak to them and see all the things that they get up to. And that's it. Well, I do have a ton of cousins, but they're kind of scattered around mostly the West Country, Dorset and Cornwall. And my grandparents had 8 children, so my mum's one of 8. So they've all had 2, 3, 4 children each, so there's loads of us.
I bet that was fun growing up with all those cousins.
Yeah, it was really fun. Yeah, It's like a big tribe.
Yeah, and so where were you in the placement of your siblings?
I am the top 3. Oh, sorry, my siblings, I am the eldest.
Yeah, you're the eldest.
Yeah, okay, eldest of 3.
And your children, at what age are your children?
So I have Madison, who is 10, Noah, who is 8, and Elijah Blue, who is 5.
And you're part of our Kerith Windsor site, aren't you, as a family? How long have you been coming on to Kerith Windsor?
About 6-7 months before lockdown happened last year. Been kind of attending online and trying to do our best through whatever last year was.
Yeah. And and now we're in 2021, and it kind of, I've seen a few things where people have said, oh, can you take me back? I prefer 2020, the way 2021 is going so far, but we're still standing, we're still here, so.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it's so good to have you with us. Do you do anything outside of the home for work?
I have done for the last sort of 7-8 years. I've worked in a restaurant in a bar in the evenings because we made a decision that we wanted to home educate the kids. So I needed to get a job in the evenings. So that worked amazingly well for us. But obviously since last March, when the restaurants had to close, my restaurant didn't open again, unfortunately. They actually closed for good. So I haven't had a job since then.
That's so sad, isn't
it?
But
in normal times, yes, I work in the evenings, a couple of evenings a week.
You work in the evenings. And you mentioned, you made the decision to home educate your children. So
yes.
When did you make that decision? Was that before the eldest was even due to start school? Or
No, actually, she went to nursery, like your kind of average 3.5-year-old, and then went to school, just went through the motions. And as I was preparing her for school and taking her to school, I just had this feeling in my stomach of, oh, she's just too small. I think that was also heightened by the fact that my sister, who lives in Australia, they don't go to school formally till they're 7.
Yeah.
So they're roughly the same age, her and Olivia and Madison. And I was, bringing, Maddie went into reception. And whilst reception is great, they are still doing numbers and letters and a long day. And I was then speaking to my sister and she'd be like, oh, Olivia was at kindergarten today and she did painting, or just very much more like a nursery environment for her. And I just thought, I really wish Maddie could do that at her age. She was only 4 because she's 5 in the May, so she's one of the younger ones. And I just said to my husband, oh, I wish I could not send her so little and she could go back when she's 7. And then I started looking online for different ways of how we could educate and what the rules were and things like that. And then I stumbled across home education and I was like, oh, that looks interesting. So she was already near the end of reception by then. But sorry, I forgot to say when she started reception, because she wasn't 5 until the May, I spoke to the head teacher and said, could she just do mornings? I'd pick her up lunchtimes until the May. And the head teacher reluctantly said, yes, that's fine. because she wasn't the legal age of 5 yet, so that was allowed. So after 5, she went back into school at year 1 in September, and then I kind of had discovered home education by then. So then I was kind of saying to my husband, please let me just give it a go. And if it's rubbish and we learn nothing and it's terrible, school's always there.
Yeah.
And most of the rest of the world don't really go to formal schooling until 7 anyway. So if I have till she's 7 and then she goes back to school, she's not behind anybody, or, most of the world. And he said, okay, fine, we'll give her till she's 7. So
and then a few years later, and you're still home educating.
Yes,
and with 3.
Loved it. Yeah, we've loved it. We've since obviously Madison left school, I then took Noah out of nursery because it was I home educated Maddie for a little while to find my feet and things, and then once I realised this is for me, this is what I really want to do. I don't want Noah at nursery, so he then came out of nursery. Hannah's never been to school, and Elijah's never been to nursery or to school.
Wow. Yeah, we're recording this people will be listening to this a few weeks later probably, but we're recording this in the first week of this new lockdown 3 in 2021, the week in which schools closed to all but children of critical workers. So there's been a lot, and I think the narrative is geared towards like the assumption, because the majority of children are in the school education system. So for lots of us, we're kind of like, our week's been turned upside down. But for you, this is normal, like business as usual at the moment. I mean, obviously the lockdown affects you in different ways, I'm sure, but tell us a bit about what a normal week in the life of a home educating family looks like, can you?
This is one of the questions I've had a lot actually from my friends and families since the lockdown, even last year. People saying, oh, it's no different for you, is it? And I think, oh, actually, it's so different for us.
Is it?
I think we're all basically been thrown in the same boat. We're all, I would like to call it lockdown learning. It's not really home education, because for us, home education is freedom, and there's no freedom in this at all, really. You're stuck at home, or you have limited access to outside, and all of the things that enrich the children, our children usually, on a weekly basis. So I wouldn't say that I'm in any better off position than anybody else, or apart from the fact that I don't have the stress of the school giving me a list of things that I need to complete with my kids, because I would find so overwhelming to have to, because I think it's ebbs and flows. Some days the kids are really keen to do things and we get loads of stuff done, and then the other weeks they're just and I think that's how normal life is, you up and down. I think to try and get stuff done in this lockdown relentlessly every day would for me be really difficult to try and achieve. So hats off to the parents that are trying to do that. But for a normal week for us, obviously not in lockdown, we learn so much in and around the community with friends. I'm not an unschooler. I have tried, but it's not my thing.
Tell us what unschooling is for people that don't know what that.
Unschooling is giving the children the freedom to learn. I think it's the best way, if you can do it, to learn as they would, what they'd like to learn, when they would like to learn it, to basically surround them with enrichment and encourage them to basically develop in a way that they are naturally going to develop. You'll find people that are dancers will gear towards the arts rather than force them to do geometry. You're letting them do the things that they are interested in doing.
So unschooling is like 100% child-led, isn't it? They're completely choosing every
but also I think there's a lot of parent input in unschooling. Unschoolers are tuned into their children and able to think, oh, okay, my daughter's into this, so then providing those kinds of things for them to allow the child to lead their own. It's not as easy as just letting the kid do whatever it likes. It's very thought through, and unschoolers are great. I am still unfortunately controlled by the system in a way. I am, in my own mind, I worry about their spellings, their reading, their writing, and I find it difficult to trust myself that they will learn those things, even though I know that they will. It's very hard when you are schooled, a naturally schooled person, in the back of your mind is, oh, their cousins can do this and they can't yet, and trying to be okay with it. It's a process of actually I am okay with it, and I don't mind that they're not reading at their attained level yet, or their writing's not as neat as someone else their age, and things like that. That's something I, as a schooled person, would struggle, as a parent would struggle with. But unschoolers have this wonderful ability to actually totally trust the children and not worry about things like that. And I do often wish I could be more like that.
Okay, yeah.
So for a week for us, it kind of, I have the sort of, I say schooly things that I would like them to do. So our skills in the morning, so like their reading, their writing and their maths that we do, not every single morning, but most mornings we do that. And then I have kind of a list for each child of things that they're interested in that I have already investigated for them. So documentaries, so worksheets, spreadsheets, books, things like that. So whilst I'm doing the skills with the other child, they just pick something that they would like to do that morning from the list, and then they just get on with it, especially the older two. They just get on with that whilst I'm reading with the other ones. Yeah, then we're out and about on school trips and library trips and supermarkets and, you know, all those kinds of things that they're out and about learning and living and having play dates with their friends. So I think lockdown, especially for our kids, has been really hard, because I think for children that go to school, maths in your pajamas is novel and it's amazing. And they think it's really fun, or, you know, science in the garden is wonderful. And I think it carries a bit of the fun.
Novelty.
Yeah, the novelty, that's the word I was looking for, of it for a lot of children that go to school, whereas ours are a bit like, we've done this now. So often it's not anything new to us. So this is a struggle to keep them a bit more entertained.
Yeah, it's really interesting to hear you say, when you said a few moments ago about actually like that perception that this time is just easy for you because you're doing this usually, was actually this lockdown, this COVID times actually really affects you as well. So it's kind of a myth around home educators is the term, is it, rather than homeschooling? Is that the term?
Yes, generally home educating. Yes,
home educating. So are there any other myths that you think around people that are home educating, the families that are home educate? Are there any other myths or things that you come up against that you kind of find are quite themes that you see?
Before I became a home educator, when I was reading it online, I thought, oh, home educating. My instant thought, if I'm honest, was, oh, they must be a bunch of weirdos who doesn't send their children to school, and they're all a bit, for want of a better word, a bit hippie-ish, or they're a bit out there, and they're a bit outcast of society. They must be a little bit strange if they don't follow and toe the line. And actually, I've met such a variation of people through home education. Some mums are hippie-ish, and that's great, and they're doing their thing. Some mums are very much a homeschooler, in terms of they try and emulate school at home. So they don't send their children to school, but they do have more of a structured thing at home, whereas most home educators don't send their children to school because they don't want it so regimented. They are a bit more free. So I'm a bit half and half.
Yeah. So that's one of the myths. Are there any myths or preconceptions you come?
Yeah, I think another one is where I think other mothers or teachers assume that I don't agree with their way of their choice, because they assume I'm anti-school, or I'm anti-establishment, or if they are a school teacher, they kind of assume that you're not attacking, I don't know what the word is, kind of assuming that their life choice and their path as a teacher you disagree with, because you've decided to remove your child from that environment. And that's actually not the case for most home educators. It's just a family choice. If you're lucky enough to be able to work in the evenings, because many are not, they don't have that option, and you think it's something that you'd like to do, or you feel called to do it, convicted to do it, it's not because you think school is rubbish. There are people that have those thoughts, don't get me wrong, and I don't think the education system is without flaw, but it doesn't mean that home education is all rainbows and sunshine either. It is, it's hard.
I think from the moment we have children, we are presented with kind of choices, aren't we?
Absolutely.
And those choices are not presented always in a, hey, you have a freedom of this choice. They're pitted against each other. So like how you decide to feed your baby, right from the start, there's this kind of like judgment and external pressures, and then how you choose to parent and raise your children, and how strict you are with certain things, how your style of doing things, particularly with mums. I mean dads don't get the same pressure but mums, there's kind of like this, will they return to work or not, and hopefully it gets to a point where the pressure is equal for mums and dads, because it's, it shouldn't necessarily be one more than the other. But in some families it might be that the dad really passionately feels he should stay home with the children, or both parents might want to work full time, not necessarily because they have to financially, but because they want to, and that's a choice for their family. And And I think there's loads of different ways to do family and to raise and parent our children. And yeah, it doesn't have to be a pitted against one another.
I think we've got into a culture of competition, and it's whose way of life or parenting style is better than the others. And I think if you're working full time and your kids are at school, that is hard. If you are a dad, stay-at-home dad, and your wife's working, and you're whichever path that you choose, you're home educating, it's not an easy life by any means. I think we need to kind of take the pressure off of each other that any one is better than the other. I think if you're doing the best you can and you're doing the best for your family, that's all you can do, isn't it? And not feel like if you are gone back to work and a mum says, oh, she's staying at home, not to feel instantly like she's saying that she thinks you've made a bad decision. It's not actually about you and your choices. There's about them and theirs.
Having the confidence to stand on our own decisions is a really important thing, whatever subject we're talking about to do with parenthood.
But when I decided to take Madison out, Lee and I decided to take Madison out of school, I had dinner with a couple of friends of mine, and I said, oh, this is what I'm thinking of doing. And they kind of looked at me like I was crazy. And I said, what do you mean? I said, well, most of the world don't go to school till 7, and we're going to just... They said, do you know any other home educators? I said, no. They said, do you know any classes yet? Or do you know if there's any in your area? And I was like, no, I don't know anything. They were kind of a bit like, oh, how could you do this? I felt the confidence of school is there. If I decide that this is rubbish and it's not going to work, then go back to school. It's not and like you say of the rules, you're not given choices. I wasn't told at 3.5, you don't have to send your kid to nursery if you don't want to. It's your child, I just did what I thought I had to do, and I didn't really realise there was any other options. So I think a lot of people, given the choices, would maybe think about choices that they had a little bit more rather than just go through the motions. Because once your child is in school and settled, they're very much more reluctant. I do meet many, many mothers whose children go to school who say, oh, I wish I'd found out about this now. I said, well, you can still give it a go if you like to do that. And you're able to. And they say, oh, no, I couldn't now. They've got some friends in class and I couldn't do it. So I think, there's fear of change.
Yeah. You mentioned about friends in class, and you mentioned earlier about play dates as well. I think a misconception I've had, which I think has changed over the last couple of years, but in the past has been, well, what about children's socialisation skills and hanging out with other children? For me, school is not just about, learning mathematics, and, it's the whole social experience as well, and which can be a really hard place as well at times, but also the goodness and the fruit that comes from that. How do you intentionally ensure your children, because your children are all like they can hold a conversation, they're more than that, they are so
but that's in the preconception that because they're home educated that they wouldn't be able to do that. And
I didn't mean hold a conversation as in I didn't mean that they couldn't hold a conversation. I mean they are overly they are above average articulate and can socially with other children and with adults as well. And how do you ensure that they have that wider experience with other? Do you meet up with other home educating families?
Yes, I think when you first home educate, your biggest question is socialisation, and then you become kind of a long-term home educator, and it's probably the worst question that you come up against after a few.
Sorry.
No, it's not. It's everywhere you go. What about the socialisation? What about socialisation? And children, I find in school, they socialise by association because they're kind of put into the same groups of same children, and that's who they have to, get on with and make friends with and whatever. But I have found in the world of home ed, it's really interesting because there's so many things that happen, so many park meetups, museum days out, zoo trips, days to the beach, all those kinds of things, and everything in between. There's actually too much. I found myself almost burned out the first couple of years of trying to be at everything.
Oh, really?
Every single meetup, every single group. It's just too much. So you do have to kind of cut it back to have the weeks and the months that you find as a rhythm for your own family. You do find, oh, they're going, so I need to go. You don't want to miss out. You don't want your children to be the only ones that are not there. But invariably, you can't do everything.
So do you join a network?
Yes, there's many, many different types of networks. And I found over the years that certain areas are certain, so there's the certain areas which are the unschooler type mums, and there's the other areas which are quite schooly type mums, and then you find your own kind of crowd within that. As you go around, you meet the odd mum and family that you think, oh, they kind of connect with you and they have your similar things, so now you have your own sort of community, and that happens with everybody.
Yeah.
So there's no shortage of friends and socialization and things like that. But I do find it's really interesting that a lot of home educated children are friends with varied age.
Okay.
So you'll find Elijah, my 5-year-old, he'll say his best friend is a 10-year-old or an 8-year-old.
Yeah.
When Madison will play some days with 6, 7-year-olds, which is a younger kind of play, and then she'll play with sort of pre-teens.
Yeah.
That's kind of like the more mature side of her plays with them. I find that quite interesting. They wouldn't have had the opportunity to have these varied friendships had they been with their own age groups.
Yeah.
Which I think was a pro of home ed, I suppose.
Yeah. No, it's good because as I say, I used to have that preconceived idea of, and it was wrong. Like I've learned through the last couple of years I've met your family, your children a couple of times. I've met I know of other families who are home educating and realise actually, it's wrong to assume that, children aren't hanging out with other children. They are.
Yeah.
They are. So, and that's part of getting you onto this conversation is to help bust some of those myths and help.
I have had quite a few people say, oh, do you, because it's home education, do you stay at home all the time? And I have had to actually factor into my week home time because we're actually out so much. It's out and about so much that you get exhausted. You think I haven't done any washing, I'm not on top of my house, the food shopping, because we are out too much. So we have to make sure we factor that in.
Yeah. You mentioned about them playing with different ages is one of the pros. Any other pros and cons that you would?
Yeah, so many pros. I think it's different for different families. For us, I think the pros would be togetherness. I really love the fact that they are together and they're working out a lot of their relational, social things with each other. As siblings, I think that's often an underrated relationship, siblings, and then being separated most days, it doesn't sit right. I'm really happy that they are together a lot of the time. And then they do separate off and do their own things, but the fact that they are together is really important to me.
If children have siblings, they obviously not all children. Some children are lone children, don't have siblings, but for those that do, that's where you first learn conflict management.
Absolutely.
Within your sibling group. And I've, the lockdowns we've experienced with my family, I have 4 children, and the quality of their relationship, I can see the benefit of having had these lockdown times and the extra time with one another they wouldn't usually have. They are much closer knit as a result of having more time together rather than just going their separate ways usually. So I can totally see the benefits to that.
And it's lovely as well in home ed because you may find that they're both friends with the same person for different reasons. Like Noah will love to jump on the trampoline with that child or have that kind of rough and tumble friendship with them, but then Maddie will have the arty sit down and colouring side friendship with them. So you can be friends with the same people but for different reasons as well, which I find is quite nice. Often I would imagine if they were at school they would have totally separate friends, totally separate lives, and they wouldn't be as so knit together, I suppose. So another one would be me being involved in a lot of their experiences, like watching them make new friends and analysing how they do that, just being in the periphery of their lives and watching them include the lonely person or begin a game, just be able to watch how they behave that you wouldn't normally get to see. I find that quite special. And being there as a person, if there is a conflict or anything and there is an uncomfortable situation, I'm just there to either guide or listen and help. I like to be able to be there for that as well, which is good. And I wrote down here, learning together is another one. Often when we're learning a topic, or for example this week is Alexander the Great, so as our history, so we're doing, and I've learned so much about that. I was clueless, and often the topics that we pick and we delve into, I'm learning just as much as they are. So I think that's really fun to be able to learn stuff together.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, that's quite special. So there's many pros, not just academically, but like I said, sort of relationally and socially, how they what they struggle with, what each individual child struggles with or is very good at. I get to notice those kinds of things, which is good. It doesn't mean there's no cons though. Let's just put that in there.
Okay.
There's
What kind of cons are there?
I think educationally, like I said, I think home ed is a massive pro, but I think with time in home ed is both the best thing and the worst thing, because I think I get all the time. I get to see everything and I'm involved in their lives, which I desperately want to be, and I'm so thankful that I can be, but at the same time having no time to myself is detrimental, especially during a lockdown when you don't have your auntie or your nan to kind of give me a breather. That's really hard. That's really difficult. So I would say, you know, that's a big con, and not in the beginning, not factoring in during your day time for yourself. My husband often say, factor in time after lunch or somewhere where you get some time on your own. I think, oh yeah, I'll do that, and then you don't do it, and before you know it, you're like, you know, 25 months down the line and you haven't even had so much as a bath to yourself or something, because you you don't factor in yourself, which is important to do. And it's one of the cons, I would say, for me, is not having, and I suppose it's not even not having it. You don't ask for it because you feel like other people have said, well, you've chosen to home educate, so you shouldn't really, and they've never said that. My mum's never said that. But you feel like if I said, oh, mum, please, could you have the kids on this day? I just need a break. That they would say, well, you know, you chose to home educate, so if you can't cope with it, you know, that kind of thing. And I think that's just pride at the end of the day. That's, if in any situation, if you need help, you should ask for it. So without being proud.
I mean, obviously I don't home educate, but I can identify with that sometimes, like just through having the amount of children I have, sometimes if I need a bit of help with something and then I don't ask, because I think people might be like, well, you chose to have all these children. Like, so, but I think that's a common thing, that we're not good, are we, at asking, saying, hey, I need help. Until it's too late.
I think another con as well for me would be that just when you're just an average mum, just having a moan to a friend or a family member about how hard it is sometimes, whether you're working at school or whether you home ed, people want to fix it, don't they? So when you're just having a moan about how difficult it is at times, when they want to fix it, their answer is often, we'll put them back in school then. And I think, well, if I was running a marathon and I got to kind of, because for me, this is my marathon, this is what I want to do, this is something I've chosen to do and I'm dedicated to it. But when you're just having a moan and it's hard, if I was metaphorically running a marathon and I was getting to like mile 21 or 22 and I've got the last, you know, little bit to go, you wouldn't say, oh, stuff it, let's just go to the pub or something. You would encourage that person and shout them all the way to the finish line. And I think when you are home editing and you do have a bit of a moan, often people's, without meaning to, they're just trying to help by saying, oh, do you know what, well, then maybe if it's really hard, just put them back in school. And you think, oh, that's not helpful.
That is a really good analogy, that marathon one. I think that could be applied to a lot of things.
Yeah,
I think
absolutely.
As human beings, we often do lean towards, I'll try and fix you, I'll give you the answer, and actually, as you say, sometimes people aren't looking, most of the time people aren't looking at that, they're just looking for a safe space to just vent and let off steam, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. And you just want someone to cheer you on and encourage you and get you, you know, that little bit further.
Oh, that's really good. So in terms of those of us who are usually, our children are usually in school, and currently we find ourselves in this lockdown with our children homeschooling rather than home educating. Maybe we're not even homeschooling, they're learning in the home as opposed to in the school where they usually are. What would you say, you know, we kind of debunked that myth earlier about it being fine for you because you're used to this. I don't know, it's obviously it's very different for you now as well, but have you got any pearls of wisdom, even if it's things to do with like patience, like how, because I look at someone like you, Sarah, and I think you must have so much more patience than me because of what you do.
I know, and that's probably not true at all. And I just think I wouldn't be. How do people get up, get their school stuff, their lunches, their bags, their cookery stuff to school run? How, I just don't understand how people can do that without killing each other every day. I just couldn't.
Well, I have to say, the first lockdown, it was easier last year than I found this week. And that was one of the reasons, because I wasn't doing the rat race of school runs and packed lunches and remembering this and that. Actually, I found it easier than the first time around. But what wisdom would you have, for anyone at the moment who is like,
I think there's two different things for me here, because one would be if your child's of an age where the school are sending lots of schoolwork for them to complete, that's quite difficult, and I wouldn't know how to manage that. Because if you are an academic kind of person and your kids are, then you can come down, do your schoolwork in the morning and it's done. And some children are really keen to do that and some children are not. I know that my kids are, my boys especially, my morning slot is my strike while the iron's hot. If the morning goes, there is no point sitting with my boys in the afternoon to try and get their reading and writing and things like that done. It just turns into a war zone, so it's just not worth it. Whereas my daughter, she's a night owl. She's up fiddling and doodling and doing all of her bits and bobs, and she's into spies at the moment, into all of her crime solving and things into the evening. So I think different children work at different ways.
Yeah.
So when they are used to being up kind of in the rhythm of school and now it's not school, I would maybe try and work out that if a child is really lazy and slow in the mornings, then allow that and then let them do their schoolwork maybe in the afternoon if it suits them. Suits them better. And if some children are much more awake in the evenings, let them do that. But I think as parents, we think, right, up 9 o'clock, schoolwork, get it done, then you've got the rest of the day to yourself, which does make sense, but I don't think every child works like that, maybe.
Yeah. And I'd say to parents who are listening, whose children are usually in school, email, and that some schools will be setting like live lessons at a certain time of day, and it's but if that doesn't respond well with the rhythm of your family, maybe parents are working at home, different things, maybe shared devices, they can't be there, communicate with your school, because the teachers are 100% like wanting the best
for the children.
Absolutely are.
And I think if it's causing stress in the home and you say to the teachers, actually, I'm really struggling with this and I can't manage this, we're going to take the list of the things that you've given, we're going to do the best that we can, schools will be more than supportive.
They really are. If you just get in touch, they don't know, do they, unless we speak up. So
exactly. And I think mothers and parents are at home stressing and feeling like failures because their children aren't doing, but they don't realize that no other children in the class is also doing the whole thing. Everyone's just is in it together. I don't really have many words of wisdom in terms of what they're giving you, because I wouldn't know how to manage that, but like you say, speaking to the school and saying what you're struggling with.
How about you though, as how do you, like we talked about you carving out time for yourself, but you in terms of not managing the academia, but managing you as mum in this and your emotions and
that's really hard, isn't it? That is really hard, especially when you're not getting your kind of needs met in terms of social gatherings and chatting to mums and ticking all your boxes of going out and getting all of their enrichment. It is really difficult. It is really difficult. I think just making sure that you stay in contact with some close friends and you messaging them and FaceTiming them
it's good,
as much as you can, as and trying to literally just stay positive and look at the good, because there's so much good. Even though you are locked down, your kids are together, you're all together, have some fun, do something that you've never done before. Don't worry so much about the academic list. And what I have found during my journey of home ed is tried to do so many different versions of home ed. So some people are naturally unschoolers. That's the way they've lived. So when they've had children, even when they've been pregnant, they know that's the path that they want to do. I was clueless. I just know that I felt convicted to take Maddie out of school. Then I did school at home for a few months and I was getting really strict and shouty, and that's not who I was. And then I did nothing for a year and let them do whatever they liked. And then I had unruly pirates running around the house and I had to rein it in again. So my pearls of wisdom, I suppose, would be to lead the home as the person that you are. If you need them to tick off their maths and their English so it makes you feel like they have, then encourage them to do that, because then the home works better. I know, especially for me, I've tried to be an unschooler, and after 18 months of, or not even 18 months, but of wild waiting for them to pick up the encyclopedia by themselves, and they don't, and start doing algebra by themselves and they don't, and getting so stressed of why it's not working, I just came to the realization that it's because I am not an unschooler. That's not who I am. I am academic. I need them to do their things, to even to appease me, to tick. Then feel like they've done it, we're on a good path. I feel better. I feel calmer because I feel like they are progressing in some sense. It's a strange thing, but my advice would be to just lead the home. If you feel like doing art today, then do art with them and engage with them.
Be self-aware of your own identity and lead your home in that way. That's kind of a summary.
Yeah, and not to be, you have to do this, you have to do this, you must do this, and take less pressure off yourself.
Yeah.
Do the best you can, and if they are at a level where they need to do their classes, then encourage them to do those classes. But then in the downtime, don't think that every waking minute of a school day in lockdown needs to be absorbing some sort of academic thing that you have given to them. Yeah. They can do their class and then give them an hour, time to relax. I think they need that downtime because it's very intense. It's not like a school day. They're not learning for 6 hours every day at school. No. They're playing, they've got lunch, they've got break time, they have carpet time. There are periodic breaks throughout the day. So I think we do put pressure on ourselves to think, I've got to fill 6 hours of learning.
Well, I can guarantee anyone listening that is not happening in this house. Not with the primary two anyway. With the two that are in secondary school, that's slightly different, but with the primary school, and our primary schools very much said that, like, do not attempt to do that. So that's brilliant that they've
that's good.
Thank you so much for chatting with me today. There's just one last thing I'd like to ask you, as I ask everyone who comes on the Are We Nearly There Yet podcast, phrase that we hear often when we're journeying with our children, but as parents, we're the ones on the journey. If you could go back to yourself at the start of your parenting journey, what essential items would you pack for the journey that you're on as a mum? That can be metaphorical or literal.
I think I would pack a whole lot of trust in yourself as a parent, and the children that God has given you, you are the parent exactly what they need. And I think trust in yourself and in God that you will get there. It's a journey. And if you look ahead and you see loads of bumps and mountains in the way and you think, oh my goodness, how am I going to do that? Just day by day by day. And then you look back and you think, oh my goodness, I can't believe how far we've come. And confidence. I wish I'd had more confidence in the beginning.
Yeah.
And not trying so many different things and trying to do what I perceive to be correct. Like you'd see mums in the park that are total unschoolers and their children are so great. And you think, I want to do that. But actually finding out who you are and doing who you are, do that.
Yeah.
And just working, and I wish I'd had a bit more sense to do that at the beginning. It would have saved a lot of angst in the home and in myself and of worry and things like that. Just trusting that it will be.
Yeah, that's good.
That's for me.
I say to new mums and dads a lot that no one has ever had your child before. We are uniquely created by our creator, and the needs of your child will be different to the need, even within your home, the needs of your different children are different and they're uniquely created, and we can all give advice and share tips and things that have worked for us, but ultimately at the end of the day, only that this child has been created uniquely and you have been chosen as their parent, and you
absolutely
have to, trusting your own instincts and trusting in God.
And you're not in competition with anybody.
No.
This is not a competition. I think everywhere you go in life, people are competing for everything. And I think actually just trusting in yourself and confidence in God and knowing that you're not in competition with anybody. You're also learning how to do this as you go along. Just being a bit gracious with yourself. I wish I was much more kinder to myself in the early years. I put so much pressure on myself to get it correct because you feel judged by, if your child, I don't know, and someone asks them, oh, you don't go to school, and then they start questioning them. And you feel like if your child doesn't have, genius answers to give them, then you're going to feel like you're failing as a home educator. It's silly, really, because they don't do that to children that go to school. They say, oh, do you know your 3 times tables then? Or how do you spell rhododendron? Whereas when
I don't know how to spell that.
No, but I think when you are not at school, they feel like they need to ask these kind of strange questions.
Yeah.
So you want to be prepped. Your kids need to know these things so they feel like they are, you're deemed worthy as a home educator.
Trust, confidence and kindness. Yeah. That's a good place to end.
Yeah. Thank you so much for today.
No, thank you for chatting to us. It's great to hear from different experiences from different people in their journey as a parent, and we really appreciate you today. So thank you. Thank you so much, Sarah, for joining me on this week's conversation. I found so much of what Sarah said really insightful, and things that I heard that actually I thought I could apply that to a different area of my parenting journey. So yeah, really grateful to you, Sarah, for joining me. Perhaps you're listening and you think, I'd love to hear Sonia talk to this person about this, or maybe you've got a personal story or experience you would love to share. Well, I want to hear from you. You can email me sonia.hopkin@kerith.church with your suggestions, your feedback, and maybe offer yourself as a guest on the podcast. Why not step out of your comfort zone and do that? We would love to hear from you. We hope that you have a great week. Join us next time on Are We Nearly There Yet?